And as they add 2 hours of programming once every quarter, if WrestleVotes is to be believed, starting in January, WWE is going to be adding another hour of programming in the form of a third hour of Smackdown. This is my nightmare come to life. 3 hours of Smackdown every Friday night on USA Network once Raw transitions over to Netflix. And we still don't know for sure if Raw will be 3 hours when it moves to streaming. The belief is that it will, but they could be more flexible with time. So if there's 1 week where the show runs short, that's fine. If there's another week where they need an overrun, they could have an overrun because USA doesn't do overruns for Raw anymore. They haven't for a while. But this comes from WrestleVotes Radio, which just launched this week with its first episode. The report says, our first real WrestleVotes tidbit here is that starting on the January 3rd, 2025 show, SmackDown will indeed shift to 3 hours. The other big news here is there are rumors that once the show ends, it will be available on Netflix, which we have not heard elsewhere. Those are the internal talkings right now, is that the day after SmackDown, the show will be available on Netflix. Now, that would also be big news because Hulu had next day streaming rights to SmackDown, but that deal just expired, or maybe it's about to. And I believe next day streaming for the show is supposed to be moving to Peacock next month. Right now, people who can't watch SmackDown Live and don't have USA, once this Hulu thing is up, they don't have a place to watch the show. And again, I don't remember if that's already the case or if the Hulu thing is up at the end of the month. Now, I think that's only for a few more weeks. WrestleVotes is claiming that starting in January, next day it will be on Netflix. Dave Meltzer is saying that NXT will be on Hulu until the end of this month as well, and then next day streaming rights will shift to the CW app, which is where NWA Power airs. I'll say this about a 3-hour SmackDown. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. As much as Raw has improved this year, I've seen that show, and I know many of you have as well, so you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. I have seen that show at its lowest. Okay, and it has gotten a lot better under Triple H. It's not perfect, but most weeks it's a very good show. I still don't believe that any wrestling television show needs to be 3 hours on a weekly basis. Special episodes, fine. Pay-per-views, fine. But for week to week, 2 hours is more than enough. Raw only moved to 3 hours because USA Network wanted to lift its Nielsen average. That was back in 2012. And Vince McMahon was not going to say no to an extra $50 million a year. Okay, I wouldn't either, but I would be gritting my teeth through the whole thing. I know why USA wants it. I know why WWE would want to continue doing it. But asking people to commit to 3 hours every Friday night is asking a lot. Now, if I was just a fan and I didn't have to cover the show as part of my job and what I do, I wouldn't watch it live, right? But I have to watch it live, so for me, it's a little bit different. For you, it might not be a big deal. And WWE, for those of you who don't know, be aware of this. WWE uploads highlight videos to its YouTube channel every single week after Raw and SmackDown and NXT that do a pretty good job of recapping and summing up the most important things on each show without having to sit through the entire thing. So you could always do that. But as a content creator, it's a little different for me. So understand when I talk about this, I may be coming at it from a different perspective. But even if I was not doing this podcast, or if I was not streaming on YouTube, I would feel the exact same way that I do about these 3-hour shows. They are unnecessary. I know a lot of fans grew up only knowing of Raw as a 3-hour show, which is sad, but that's the reality of it. So they love it. They think the move is great. That's what I got out of a lot of the comments underneath their tweet about Raw being scaled back to 2 hours for the next few months. They were very upset. Comment after comment, why are you cutting back on the show? The show needs to be 3 hours. It needs to be longer. These people don't know from a 2-hour Raw. It's like a foreign concept to them. So of course, they also want SmackDown to be 3 hours. Thankfully, it may only be temporary because WrestleVotes is also claiming the show is only expected to be 3 hours for the first 6 months of 2025 before reverting back to its traditional 2-hour format. So basically, it's a 6-month experiment to see if the show can sustain the kind of numbers and interest on a Friday at 3 hours that Raw does on a Monday at 3 hours. If it does, it's very likely that 3-hour SmackDowns are going to be here to stay. If it doesn't, they tried. It didn't work, and they go back to 2 hours. Now, WrestleVotes was also one of the sources reporting this week, I should point out, that the Lucha Bros, Penta and Rey Fenix, signing with WWE was likely a done deal. And there has already been production commencing of masks and t-shirts and promotional materials is already underway. However, Mike Johnson of PW Insider refutes these reports and says that the Lucha Bros are still very much under contract to AEW, which means that they would not even be allowed to speak with WWE about a possible deal, let alone would the company already be spending money to manufacture merch for them. Unless they already put pen to paper, they're not going to be doing that. And obviously, they haven't done that if Tony Khan still has them under contract. He says that they've even communicated, the Lucha Bros have communicated to the company that they're available to work if they want them to come, work matches and not just sit at home. Now, there are other Twitter accounts reporting that they've already signed multi-year deals with the company and they're being fast-tracked straight to the main roster. As far as I can tell, none of that is true. It doesn't mean they won't sign with WWE when their deals are up. I fully expect them to. I think that's exactly where they're going. Tony Khan clearly expects them to go to WWE. That's why they're benched at home right now. They weren't used at Wembley Stadium. They weren't used in the Tag Team Casino Gauntlet match 2 weeks ago on Dynamite because he knows that they're leaving. And maybe WWE will send them directly to the main roster and they'll bypass NXT, right? They'll send the Motor City Machine Guns to NXT and let the Lucha Bros go to the main roster. Very possible. But right now, that's not the case. All that to say that while I consider WrestleVotes a reliable source of information, until it is confirmed, none of this should be taken as the gospel truth. Okay? If The Rock was here, he'd be dropping some gospel on us. The final boss, he loves dropping that gospel. But I will say this. If they are expanding SmackDown to 3 hours, they better be prepared to do some trades between the general managers of the two shows and call up some new faces from NXT. Because what SmackDown needs right now is more depth. They need a deeper bench, they need more heels at the top of the card, and they need to do a better job with the women that they have. It's not even that, they don't have enough women on the roster. They actually do. If you look at the SmackDown women's roster, there's a number of women on there. But they need to do a better job with the women that they currently have on that roster. And I don't just mean like, okay, well, isn't that where 3 hours could be useful? Because then you can get more women on the show. It's not even about getting more women on the show. It's about doing better with the women they have in the time that they have. There is nothing compelling right now with the women's division on SmackDown. Nothing. Certainly nothing on the level of what they have on Raw with Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. They don't have that on SmackDown. Now, they should get Charlotte Flair back very soon, so that'll help them there. I expect that she'll be on SmackDown. Drew McIntyre, he's going to lose to CM Punk at Bad Blood. And after that, I think he should find a new home on SmackDown. I've said the same thing about Chad Gable and American Made. I think SmackDown would be a better place for them. All they do every week on Raw is fucking lose anyway. And who else is there left for them to work with at a level that would allow them to actually start winning matches, right? Yeah, they haven't worked with some of the bigger names. They're not going to beat them. I think SmackDown would be a good landing spot for them. I think they could also use AJ Styles, who's been sitting at home. I would rather they actually send AJ to Raw. But that just goes to the issue of trades, which is something that we have not seen since the draft. Adam Pearce made that deal with Nick Aldis last month. Remember that? To get Austin Theory and Grayson Waller on Raw for one night? I don't think he ever got anything in return for it. I guess he got an IOU. But SmackDown is going to need help if they go through with this. 6 months or permanent. Either way. And if there's no draft until April or May, which there shouldn't be, there should not be one until after WrestleMania, they can't wait that long. Changes need to be made before then. Trades between the GMs, even if it's a lopsided one in favor of SmackDown, or SmackDown gets more name talent and gives up draft picks to Raw for NXT talent. I mean, whatever it is, they're going to have to do something. But if this happens, that's also the end of Rampage. You can kiss that goodbye. I'll talk about AEW in a bit. It sounds like Rampage is on borrowed time anyway. But if Rampage has to go head-to-head with Smackdown every week from 10 to 11, you think the numbers are bad now. This will be the death blow.